We have a very special guest today. It's somebody that I know personally, and she is a wellness practitioner, a holistic healer, and she has many modalities that she uses. But we're going to talk to her about one specific modality, and I'm going to let her talk about that. So let's bring her on. Welcome to the show, Noeline Levinson.
Hi,
Hi,
Noeline.
Noeline.
Hi. So
Welcome.
Noeline and I know each other from a previous life, and it's about time that we brought her on to talk about one of her many, many expertises. So Noeline, let's just get right into it. So tell us briefly about your background and experience, what you do now, and how you came to be doing what you're doing now, and what we're going to focus on today.
Okay, cool. So I started off when I was younger. At school I had dyslexia, and I have to say that was quite a number of years ago. And when I was at school, dyslexia wasn't noted as something that you took care of or you did anything to help the child. I have a memory of my headmaster standing in front of my desk talking to my teacher, saying, "She's got dyslexia, but she'll get through. She'll muddle on." Okay, that was the first time I'd ever heard the word, and I I thought, wow, that's interesting. I wonder what that is. I wonder what I've got.
So they didn't tell you what it was?
No, I just heard
Gotcha.
them talking about me in front of me, which is also weird. Anyhow, I I did muddle through. I did struggle through school, and in fact, when I left school, all my friends went off to university, and I hadn't done quite as well as I should have done in order to get into the classes I wanted to do. And I looked into teaching because I'd always wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't sort of resonate with the kind of structure that school teaching required. And so I went off to be a dancing teacher. And then my mum said to me, "Come, you need to go and come with me to Paris. We're going to go and do this sound therapy with tomates." So who doesn't say yes to Paris, right? So off I went to join her in Paris and did the sound therapy with tomatis. And indeed, it really did help me learn. I was able to then return and go to university, and I studied English and psychology. And those textbooks are huge. Those words are difficult. Those are not easy words, and I managed them. I didn't know how it had helped me, but I knew that it had. And then I opened my sound therapy center with my mum, and eventually I opened my own. And I would treat. I started off actually with pregnant mums, actually, just to be truthful, and then eventually landed up working with children because, of course, children are so in need, and lots of children with learning difficulties and autism, a lot of children with autism. And it was a learning curve. I had to understand what was going on with these children, and I think by the grace of God, I somehow landed up going to be brain profiled. And I remember sitting in the room being brain profiled and having this incredible epiphany of, oh my God, I'm not stupid. I grew up in a family of academics who kept saying to me, "Why don't you read? What's the matter with you?" And I'm like, "I don't know what the matter is. I would like to be like you, but I don't seem to be." And I remember feeling so less than and just not clever in my family. And I had my mum's a psychologist, my dad's a psychiatrist, my sister has a PhD in paleontology, the other one has a PhD in nursing. You can tell I just didn't fit in. And I really did struggle. But when I had my brain profile done, I thought, you see, I'm not stupid. I'm different. And it's okay. I just do things differently. And it doesn't mean that I'm stupid. It just means that I'm different. And I remember it being such a relief and such a wonderful moment of self acceptance that I could hold my head up high, that I could go into a place and feel just as good as, not less than. And for me, that was huge. In addition, it helped me when I now profiled every child that I saw in my sound therapy center, and that I could give the parents this information. For me, that was just massive. I could really explain to them how their children think, how they act when they're stressed. And the parents were, overwhelmed, just so grateful to have the information. And I often then would share it with that child's teachers on how that child learns, how to communicate with them, how to communicate better. When you see the child glazing over, what you need to go and do. And that was a game changer for those teachers. So it was really, really wonderful. And I could also understand how the sound therapy I was doing was going to actually get that brain to function again. So it worked really beautifully together with the sound therapy. And from working with children, I landed up in companies because often those parents who brought their children so loved the brain profile. They said, look, I've got 7 staff, please come and profile them. And so I landed up in different companies and profiling people and landing up helping them with recruitment. I've helped them with redeployment of staff. So it kind of went from there and it went upwards from there. And so brain profiling has been an incredible tool. And I love it because it's not done through questionnaires. And I love that about it. I remember I had to profile one of the directors of one of the biggest banks in South Africa. And I was so nervous. I remember literally shaking. And because you're doing this through muscle checking, I was standing with my hand on his shoulder and I just couldn't stop myself from shaking. It was really a little bit amusing. But once we got through the brain profiling aspect of it, and I gave him the details of his profile, he absolutely said that I have done every kind of profiling out there, every kind. And this was the most accurate because I didn't have to answer a questionnaire. Because in the questionnaires, 2 questions are correct for me. Which one am I going to answer? The next question, none of them are correct for me. Which one am I going to answer? And so I answer according to who I think is going to be reading that. So this is much more accurate and usable. I can use this information. I can take it and put it into my life and now explain to other people what I need or why I'm behaving in a certain way. So it was really interesting coming from somebody who really understood profiles in a way that not many people do.
When it would have helped you understand having clarity around how you tick and how you learn and how you process information. That would have
Yeah.
really given you such peace when your family around you would have
Yeah.
like, "What's wrong with you?"
I
So
know you
tell
can't
us,
believe.
what is a brain profile?
A brain profile is a blueprint of how your brain is wired. It's genetically inherited, much like the color of your hair or the color of your eyes. It's genetically inherited. It doesn't change from birth to death. You got one, right? It's the wiring of how your brain is wired. How you take information in, how you process it, and how you express it out. The thing is that under stress, your profile, half of it will switch off because your non-dominant side of your brain switches off under stress. And if that happens to govern how you speak, or how you listen, or how you read, or how you take action, your behavior is going to change when you're stressed. Which is why we don't behave under stress the same way for some of us as we do when we're not. And honestly, this is a game changer for some people to understand. I have to tell you a story. I was stopped by a cop just recently, be given a speeding ticket. And my heart was racing. And I didn't say a single word. Everything he asked me, I just nodded or said yes. I didn't think of anything I could possibly say. But for the rest of my journey home, once my heart had calmed back down again, I could think of 1,000 things I could have said. And I kept saying to myself, why didn't you say this? Why didn't you question him? Why didn't you fight back? And I just didn't because under stress, I don't speak. And so it is, and I nodded to myself in understanding that this is me, but I had this conversation all the way back home. Why didn't you say this? Anyway, but this is exactly how it is. So it's a blueprint, and not to be confused with functional dominance. Functional dominance is the hand you write with, the foot you kick with, and this can change in your life. They used to force left-handed children to learn to write with their right hand. So functional dominance can change. Your genetic dominance doesn't. And you're supposed to overcome your profile. You're not supposed to be a slave to your profile. As you get older, your brain is integrating, and the more integrated it is, the more you're using your whole brain. But under stress, it will switch back on. And
Mm.
that's why we need to know what happens to us when we're stressed, right? What has stopped functioning? So I can either work some strategies around it or explain to people around me what's going on.
So, how many profiles are there?
I think there are 36 combinations because you're not just a left and right brain hemisphere. There's a lot more to your brain than just left and right. And so if you went online and you looked up, am I left or right brain? Not enough. Because you could be left brain dominant, but your right brain is governing how you see, how you hear, how you talk. It might not be your dominant processor, but it will be the dominant processor for the various things that you do. So it's not enough to know if you're left or right brain dominant. There's a lot more to the story. And also whether we're expressive or receptive. Because if we're more expressive, we're more like leaders. And if we're receptive, we're more like followers.
Mm.
And that changes your personality completely. It's a complete change of personality. And your expressives are people who will get up and go, get knocked down, they get back up again, they dust themselves off, they get back on the horse, and off they go. Your receptives get knocked down and they go, oh, okay, this is not for me.
Mm.
I'll change. I'll quit. I'll do something else. So it's a different thing.
So the brain profiling doesn't just check your left or right brain dominant, it checks for other areas of the body. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the point is that you have how do I explain this to you? Everything actually is your brain. When you're actually your brain is seeing, your brain is hearing, your brain is communicating. Everything really is your brain. So it's quite a difficult thing to understand how to categorize that. But whichever eye is dominant, there'll be a dominant eye versus a non-dominant eye. So let's say, for example, the child is left eye dominant. That child is actually reading from right to left, which is the opposite way to the way English is written. And that is classified as dyslexia.
Okay.
Yeah. So it isn't actually a fault. It isn't an illness. It actually is the way the brain is wired. And now we have to work with that. Now we've got tools to help the brain to integrate. And what we do when we do that is we strengthen the right eye, which tracks from left to right. And that's what the sound therapy was doing. It was strengthening the connection between the right eye and the left brain, which was actually getting my right eye to be stronger. And so I was able to read
Yeah. Wow.
because that's the reading eye. So do you see how it works? It's not. I got an email today from somebody who says the neurodiversity is not about the way your brain is wired. It's just a taught thing. It's just something that your brain is taught. And I thought, no, actually, you have to start by knowing how it's wired.
Mm.
And then you can figure out how you're going to integrate it so that you can actually get it to be stronger. Because it's the integration that's the key. That's why crawling is so important for babies. That's why you don't put them in walking rings, because crawling is so important for brain integration. And babies who don't crawl really battle later on with learning.
Wow.
So there isn't anything we do that's by mistake. Everything has a purpose. And it's brilliant when you understand that, but it's the brain integration. And this is where things like brain gym comes in, because it's about brain integration. This is why exercise is so important, because it helps us to integrate. And so on and so forth. Learning how to read music, um, and learning how to play an instrument. These things help your brain to integrate. Doing puzzles helps your brain to integrate.
So you were able to read with more ease because you trained your right eye. Is that what you're saying?
Correct,
Like,
correct.
so how
But I
what are
didn't
the
do it
sort of things
consciously.
that? Oh, okay, you didn't do it consciously.
No, I
Okay.
used sound therapy to do it. So I
Oh,
didn't
right.
realize that that's what I was doing.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
But that's what I was doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And you're also, it tells you about your ear, right? What dominant ear, what dominant hand, and what dominant foot or leg or
Leg,
something like that? Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So how you take action, how
Yeah.
you communicate. So this is your output,
Yeah.
and your ear and your eye are your input.
Yeah.
And it really helps us to know that, because when there is a child who has got auditory processing disorder, we can actually see it in the profile. We know exactly where that's coming from. Then we can prepare teachers and parents to learn how to work with that. And we can also ultimately prepare the child how to work with that. And we can also get more brain integration going, either through exercise or music, or whatever it's going to be, to get the other ear to work harder and get more wired up so that the child actually does listen and hear. So it's completely overcomable. However, I want to say this really, to be really clear. Under stress, it will switch back on again.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you've done in terms of integration. Under stress, you switch back into your profile. And that is completely normal. And if we know what's happening, we can guard against it, but we can also forgive ourselves and tell other people, look, I'm not really good when I'm stressed in terms of being able to speak clearly. So forgive me if I'm a little bit fumbling in the beginning of having to speak to an audience. Whatever it is, if you know that this is going to happen to you, you can prepare for it and kind of be kind to yourself. But you will always, under stress, go back into your profile. And also, you cannot make yourself something you aren't.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. A woman brought her daughter to me. She thought she was going to be a tennis champion. And she was really good. She was a fabulous player, seeded number one in the country and where we lived. But of course, in matches, she would throw the match every time. And that's because she was receptive. And under stress, that came to the fore. And when that comes to the fore, what they do is they withdraw. They don't come out fighting. They go the other way. Leave me alone. I'm not interested in this. And so I had to say to the mum, she's not going to be a tennis champion. She'll be a great tennis coach. She'll be super at that, but she's not going to be a tennis champion because she's not made that way.
Yeah.
And I think that when people start to understand that about themselves and start to play to their strengths, they feel happier. They don't feel so stressed. And I can tell you there are millions of stories I can tell you about this because it's just so important to be able to play to your strengths. One of the things I found working in advertising agencies is that there is a certain profile that thinks they're creative, but the minute there's a deadline put on that person, that creativity is gone. And they don't understand why. And so they have to turn to drugs and alcohol to calm themselves down in order for their brain to switch back on. And then they're cool. They're back in action.
Well, that would explain why so many musos can play half pissed. I never understood it because I'm like, I need my dexterity. I need to be able to focus on what I'm doing in order to play. I'm only going to get worse the drunk I am. So I'm like, I don't know how they do it, but that explains it. So, Noeline, what type of, I mean, I'm sure you get a wide range of different people who approach you for brain profiling.
Yeah.
What are the most common, I think I could guess, but what different avenues of people approach you for brain profiling and different reasons that they do?
Okay, so for the most part, I focus on children with learning challenges. Because I really want them to be happy. I don't want them to grow up feeling like they're less than.
And they're also the future, you know. It's
Well, yeah, yeah, exactly. Coin a phrase. So yes, they are the future, and I really feel for them because we were all children, and it didn't feel nice to be different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I do really try and focus on getting parents to bring their children in who got challenges, any kind of challenges, whether it's just feeling low self-esteem. I had one little girl who just didn't want to go to school. The parents didn't know why. Wasn't bad at school. But she just didn't want to go. And when we looked at her profile, we understood what was going on. And so it really is a starting point. It's not an end point. It's the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah.
Because now
Like a
we've got
snapshot in time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And now we can do things. Now we know where to go. Now we know, and we've got so many tools now at our disposal. We can really make a difference for those children. And yes, for adults too. I mean, I had a man come to see me yesterday, and his girlfriend has left him, and he's heartbroken, and he desperately wants to get her back. And um, I can see where the arguments have happened. And he just, so I wanted to say this to you, that there are people who are very high functioning and they can't express that they are in trouble. They lash out when they're in trouble, and the other person then reacts to their lashing out, instead of going, "Oh, you're feeling really stressed. What's going on?" Do you see? So we kind of do this dance because we're never taught how to communicate. We've never taught this at school. We've never taught about, when you're having a meltdown, what's really going on for you? How should I react to that? I'm going to take it personally. No, mistake. Okay? That's not the right thing to be doing. Let me find out what's going on for you. Yeah? But we're not taught how to do that. So we do this dance. So I react to you, you now react to me, now we're in trouble. And here's the hilarious thing about us humans, is we choose the opposite profile to us to have a relationship with. Because kind of it makes us feel whole. Well, that's lovely. And maybe it does. But the reality is, now you're in a different hemisphere from me. You see the world differently. You communicate differently. And now you and I have got to try and get on. So the very thing that I thought I was attracted to is the very thing that's now going to trip me up. Okay. And we're not taught. Nobody is teaching us. How do we get around this? How do we do better at this? And so if we can work with couples and help them to actually understand each other, be a little bit more compassionate. And I mean, even if you do your profile together, sometimes you still have to go back to it a few weeks later and go, hang on, let me listen again. Let me look at it again. I've had to go to my husband on one occasion not too long ago and say to him, I'm tired of being the one to compromise for your profile. How about you compromise now for mine?
Yeah.
Okay. I need the bottom line and I'm tired of all the detail. Stop it. And he was like, oh, okay. He needed to hear that. He needed to hear, because I have to keep listening to all this detail, and it's terrible.
Oh, I would think this would be so beneficial for relationships.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It is. And unfortunately, the thing I came across was that the thing that is most, where people will spend money, is not on themselves, not for self um, improvement, which is really what it's about. But they will help their children. So
Yeah.
at least we start there.
Yes.
What kind of benefits do you see in the classroom once children, or really it's about the teachers learning their profile, right, and their parents? So, what kind
Exactly.
of benefits after that do you see happen?
So there have been a couple of experiences like that I've had, and this is really my passion. I want to see every single child in a school profiled, because the teachers then they save time. They save huge amounts of time. They don't have to spend a year getting to know a child. They know them on day one. And the one school was so clever. They took my profile and they put it into a little business card size, and they stuck it to the desk. And the teacher knew enough about the profile that if there was a problem, she could go up to the desk and look at the child's profile and go, okay, I know why I'm not getting through to you. How about we do it this way? The left ear is a contextual listener. If you're telling the child facts and you're not giving a story about it, the child's not listening. You've lost them. But if you can reframe it, if you can, look at it and go, oh, I know what to do for you. Let's do it this way. And children then got seen. The marks of those children in that school were so high that there was a waiting list a mile long for people to get into that school.
Wow.
They didn't know what was happening to those children, but those children were being seen and valued and taught themselves, actually taught. I remember my history teacher saying, Are you ever going to pass history? And in my head, I said, are you ever going to teach it to me?
Wow. Yeah.
You know,
So
so
the
it's so
teachers must
important.
love this, right? Teachers must love this.
Teachers do really love. They don't realize they're going to love it, but they really do love it. And the one teacher brought me 6 or 7 children. These were 5-year-olds, and she knew they were going to have difficulties because they were not New Zealanders. And from at the end of the year, she won an award for the best outcomes for those children because she knew them before she started. She knew exactly where she was going to need to work extra hard, how she was going to help them to do well, and they did. So teachers do really appreciate this, definitely.
Is there a fine line between, because you were saying before about how you don't stay in your profile? The idea is it's a starting point. So, is there a fine line with some families or teachers where it's almost like an enabling, where it's like the child adopts the identity or the individual adopts the identity and takes it as like you all have to, you know, kind of do all your things so that I don't get, triggered or whatever the language is.
Okay, so that's a really good point, Annie. And I don't tell children their profiles
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
because I don't want them to say I don't read
Yes.
because, yeah,
Yes. Okay.
no,
Cool.
I don't do that. But
Yep.
I do tell a child who's 15 or 16 who's trying to look at subject choices. That's appropriate because now we're
Yes.
looking at how do you play to your strengths,
Yes.
right? That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't tell a child of 7 their
No.
profile. I would tell
Yes.
the mother and I'll tell the teacher because they're the ones who are influencing at that point.
Yes.
And you don't need to know. You need to just be happy.
Mm.
You just don't need to have a stressful, horrible childhood, really. And so, if we can just avoid that, that would be a start. But the point is that we do go in and out. And in fact, the thing I wanted to bring up is that when you see someone who has PTSD, they've switched into their profile, but they haven't switched out. And so I did a profile for a fellow online, and he was in his 70s, and he'd been in a war, and he was a very high functioning fellow. And he said that he had gone into PTSD afterwards, but he didn't have a way to tell anybody that he was in trouble because he was so high functioning.
Wow.
And he spent years and years not being able to have relationships because his brain had stuck in that profile and not was not able to get out. So, and I mean, when you see a child, I used to work in Soweto in South Africa, which is a township where there are children who've lost everything and they're living in doorways and they go into their profiles because the stress is so constant and so high, but they completely switch out. There's a kind of a profile that does that. You can't talk to them. You can't teach them. They're not there anymore. The only thing you can now do is address the stress, literally. And so, yes, addressing the stress is so important for all of us. I mean, people in the workplace are stressed out of their minds. Our children are stressed.
Yeah.
Children are saying, I'm anxious. What is that? Who ever heard of that?
Mm.
Nobody in my school ever said to me that they were anxious. What? No, I've never heard of that before.
Mm.
But children are saying that. So we do need to address the stress. And we certainly don't want that to become PTSD, but now we can understand what's going on for PTSD. And then there's high functioning and low functioning, and they both need help.
Mm.
I would think this would be very beneficial for families who are having conflicts, especially like families with like adult children, say, because you don't want to tell the children, right? But if families with adult children, I would think that would be an amazing tool to help them figure out what's going on if they've got conflict.
Yeah, no question. It's unbelievably good for conflict. And um, I have many, many marriages I've done this work for, and some of them have really come to the fore and done really beautifully, and others have fallen apart because there was no way to fix it. I mean, that is also a reality. Unfortunately, sometimes that is the reality of the situation. But there was great understanding as to why it hadn't worked. But I think also I always had a vision of that I could teach this to people who were celebrants. so that before people actually got married, they got this information as part of their pre-nuptial education so that they could start their life on a better footing as to knowing their partner in this information. Because when we're in love, everything is marvelous. We're not in stress yet until, of course, you can't pay the mortgage. And then suddenly things go quite pear shaped.
Mm. Yeah.
And knowing that information is pretty important at that point.
Yeah, mitigating the stress and the outcomes is a big deal. Prevention is better than cure, right?
Well, it is. And I mean, in so many families I've seen, one of the children are injured or passes away, and instead of the parents coming together in the grief, they come apart.
That's so common, and I've always
Yeah.
I've always scratched my head over that.
Yeah, well, we're in stress. And if you don't understand me in that moment, I'm suddenly quite different to the person you married.
Mm.
And I'm dealing with things differently. And if you don't understand that, and I don't understand you in that situation either, because you might now go into your shell and disappear away from me. And I need you, but you've disappeared. That's your stress response. This is mine. How are we going to work this out?
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So it is essential that we understand each other, really essential.
Well, especially now. I'm finding, especially now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we are really under under the pump, are we not?
Yeah, after
Yeah.
the last several years.
Chasing
So
our tails. I feel like we're getting a crash course.
yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah, no,
and
so it's a learning curve.
Mm.
you work with people virtually, like on Zoom, as well as in person. Is that correct?
I do. I
Yeah.
do, absolutely, which is great because we can share this with the world, and I can also train people,
Oh,
which
wow,
is
I didn't know
really,
that.
really important. So if we can get people to train, we can get into schools, we can get into businesses, we can get out there to help people. The more of us there are. There are only a few of us in the world.
Wow, that's amazing. And I have to confess that Noeline did my profile about a week or so ago, and it was very interesting because I thought she was going to ask me like, when were you born and at what time and blah blah blah. No, nothing. She didn't ask me one question. She just sat there and did her thing. And then when she came forward and was telling me all this stuff, I was like, what the? And mine was very unique, I guess. I had a very unique profile, which makes sense because I am definitely not
Oh,
like
I
other
can't.
people. So,
So, Nolan, without giving, chef secrets away, how do you go about profiling? Because I heard you mention before about the guy in South Africa that you put your hand on him or whatever. So, and because you do it remotely, what information are you picking up? How do you assess?
Okay, so this is kind of where we get into the land of the woo-woo land because I'm actually muscle checking to get the information. I'm using kinesiology,
Yep.
which is known by millions of people around the world. And so I muscle check to get the information. I tune into source and I ask for your profile, and I get it. I ask the right questions and I get the answers. And this really goes into the woo woo van. I double check it with a pendulum, and and away we go. And look, that really was also a process for me. So this lockdown time gave me opportunity to pivot my business so that I could understand how to do this online. Because of course I'd never done this online before. I'd only ever seen people in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so to do this remotely was quite a thing. So I had to really learn how to do it. And it's really been good for me because I feel more confident in myself because the profiles that I do are correct and you would know they were wrong
Yeah.
because you wouldn't relate to them.
yeah, mine was a little scary. It was like, how did you know that kind of thing about me? Like, because a lot of people don't.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's also really interesting that you say that, Jodie, because I've known you for a long time and I don't know you.
Right.
I was surprised at the things I saw. I was like, "Whoa, really?" Because I did not expect that. And you think you know somebody, but you don't until you've profiled them. And I think that for me is always interesting because even though I know somebody, I don't know them until I've
Yeah.
profiled them. And so that it really is interesting there.
Yeah.
wow.
And
Yeah.
when you go in and say you do a company, say you do a team, I would think it'd be great to figure out how a team works together. Do you do them one at a time and you're alone with each one when you do it? And then okay. And
I am, and
do they all find out, or do you tell the boss and
I've I've done it lots of different ways. Yes, always one on one first, and I always give that information to the person who I'm doing it with, and then sometimes when we're doing as a team building exercise, we'll sit around a table, we'll put all the profiles out, and then we can all talk about what we're having difficulties with, and I can then show them where it's coming from, and then say, well, instead of doing it this way, how about we do it that way? Then you'll get through to this guy a whole heap better. And then sometimes going back to the boss to say, look, you need to be able to do this with your staff. They'll stop leaving. Staff turnover is huge because people don't get the affirmation they need. And the boss obviously doesn't need it. So he doesn't know you need it. He has to be told you need it. And so that's really, really important. And so, yeah, in a business setting, it really, really is useful. And I've often come across people who shouldn't really be in their jobs. And I ask them, how did you get here? Because this isn't for you. And the one was really quite funny. He said to me, I know. I said, you'd make a really good teacher. And he said, oh, please will you phone my wife and tell her that? I said, nope. But 3 weeks later, when I came to do the group work with everybody, he'd resigned and gone to live in Australia and started as a teacher. Yeah, it's quite funny.
Wow.
But yeah,
Are there specific criteria to how someone is profiled? Is there a set type kind of and variations? What is the parameters of different brain profiles?
yeah. Well, so you've got it. You're luckily we've only got left and right hemisphere to choose from, so that's lucky for most of it. But it's the combination that tells me who you're going to be and what you're going to be good at. And actually, they did this in Russia very, very cruelly, I think, for babies, and they knew then they could stream them very early on, who were going to be the ballerinas and the musicians. And I don't think that's necessary, but you can tell who the person's going to be. Are they going to be natural salespeople? Are they not going to be natural salespeople? Are they going to be performers? Are they going to be frightened of performing? So there are kind of profiles that are very, very sensitive to being ridiculed. And if you ridicule them, they won't ever return. They won't want to go back ever again. So each one has different combinations, and each combination offers a different personality. And that's really why it's so unique to you and what happens to you under stress. And of course, your brain profile is your blueprint, but your life experience is all the layers above that. And so we're a combination. And when I said to you that this was a starting point, it's a starting point in the conversation in terms of this is how you're wired. These are the things you can do with your life. These are the challenges you're going to face, and these are the ways you can overcome those challenges. And also, I can see that you're going to have processing issues. So let me help you with that. It's toxicity. I've got a way to help you with that. Or I can see you're not integrated enough. There are ways we can do that. Here are the options. So it's about not only the combination, but what do you offer after you know that information? And that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it gives interesting insight, I guess, that it's the starting point, and where you go from there, and that stress is such um, a factor. I know I did a specific personality test about 10 years ago, that a group of us were all said, yep, do this personality test because then it'll help us work together better as a team. And so I did it every 2 years, and my profile changed every time. And it was like, oh yeah, well, there was that happened, and there was that happened, So stress is a big factor, life events, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Stress is absolutely huge. And the way you react to stress doesn't change. You're still going to do the same things when you're stressed.
Yeah,
And
it's a pattern. You
it
fall
is a
through a
pattern.
pattern.
It is a pattern. But if I know that about you, I can be more kind. I can see when my husband is stressed, and although he is shouting, and I could take offense to that, I could choose to take offense, or I could say, he's really stressed. Let me see, what can I do to help the stress. And when I do that, immediately he calms down because he's seen. We all want to be seen. This is the thing. Every human being wants to be seen. We want to be validated.
Yes.
And when we're seen, it's so powerful. If we think back to teachers we loved at school, they saw us. They loved us. They gave us the encouragement we wanted. And by God, we worked hard for them. Yeah, we want that so badly as humanity. And here's the other funny thing that happens to us humans. We all think everybody thinks like we do. And if they don't, there must be something wrong with them. And that's not true. We don't all think the same. On the contrary. And that's the thing about compassion, is about let's start. How do I get to be compassionate? How do I care about you?
Right.
Part of that is learning about you, learning about what you need. What makes you tick? How do I make you happy? How do you make me happy? How do I make that happen?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Noeline, how do people work with you? Do they go to your website? Is that what they do?
Yeah, the website's the easiest way to go.
Mhm.
There are places to book, there are places, there are assessments to look at. Yeah, that's by far the easiest way. And I think I did give you the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's brainfocus.nz or NZ, as you would say.
NZ. Yeah,
Yeah.
we say Z. That sounds so fascinating, and awareness right now is really key when humanity is going through such a pivotal shift in history. I think being aware of how those around us tick and ourselves as well gives great insight into how best to navigate how we proceed, I guess, and how to be most effective to our communities, our world,
Yeah.
those around us.
Yeah.
Well, and like you
And
said, especially now, like there's so much stress in the world. And so all these people are stressed, and so they're all reverting to their profile, right? And if you don't know that, then it creates chaos, right?
Totally.
Hmm.
Totally. And the other aspect, of course, that you all know is that we're living in this incredible chemical soup, which also changes the way we process information because it gets in the brain and blocks our ability to process properly.
Hmm.
So a chap I saw yesterday, his parents had been smokers and they were very young and drank alcohol. And so although he had this incredible profile, he wasn't able to use it. So he had spent his whole life being on the back foot because he had this beautiful profile and was never able to use it. So detoxing and getting that under control and getting this inflammation right in the gut and getting our health on track, that really is so incredibly important. So we're looking at a two-pronged approach. The profile is the beginning part of the conversation, and then we're looking at what water are you drinking, what are you eating, where are the chemicals coming from, and it is an education. It really
Yeah.
is an education. That's my job. I'm an educator, and I'm here to educate and guide and support, and so that you can make those wholesale changes, so that you can take control and be different and thrive. Really.
Yeah. And I know, I think in your TikTok, I noticed that you were talking about the link between lead and ADHD and ADD. Can you
Yeah.
speak a little bit to that? Because I think there was a classroom that had 80% of the kids on meds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I was called in to assess those children, 22 children, 18 of them medicated. And I found that astounding. I just thought, that can't be right. It just can't be right. And so I really looked into heavy metal toxicity. And what I began to understand, and when I studied heavy metal toxicity in the toxicology course, I learned that lead inhibits the absorption of vitamin B1. And vitamin B1 is the thing that keeps us calm. Now, you can take vitamin B1 until you're blue in the face, but if you have lead in your body, you ain't absorbing it. So supplements just get weed out if your body is stopping it from going in. And so parents will come and say, well, I've done the vitamin B1 and nothing's helping. I go, yeah, let's do another little test. let's do I used to do chelation tests, and so I could see what metals are in the body. And yeah, and sometimes it is astronomical, the amount of lead. And so the parents had to go back, and the one house had to take out all their windows because all the paint on the windows were very old, but they were lead paint, and it had flaked off and had gone off into the atmosphere. These children were leaded up to their eyeballs. And in fact, when they came in, they were a set of twins at 11 years old. They were climbing on my furniture. I had to say to the mother, "Can you please say your children put them back in the car? I can't have them in my house until we fix them because they're just out of control. They're like animals." And we got them fixed really quickly. But I mean, the point is that you need to understand what it is you're looking at, and that's one of the things that I promised myself I would never be quiet about, because I've had so many parents sit opposite me crying. Why didn't anybody tell us the vaccines were killing our children? Why didn't anybody tell us that autism is reversible? Why didn't
Yeah.
anybody tell us? Well, I'm here to tell you. I'm not keeping quiet anymore. I kept quiet for so many years. I sat on my hands. I bit my tongue. I did all the things that people told me I had to do. And I don't do that anymore. If you come and ask me on the question, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
These things are dangerous. They're toxic. Be careful. Read the books before you put poisons in your children.
And so do you feel like that's the main way they get the lead is through that?
It's not. A lot
Yeah.
of people are smokers and thought that when they stopped smoking, um, when they fell pregnant, that would be enough. Well, it isn't. It's in your own body and you pass it on to your children. That's the other way. It also is coming through pipes. It's coming through. One woman found it in huge amounts in her garden, and then she did some research, discovered that where she used to live was a place that used to be a place where there was a factory. And
Mm.
so a whole lot of the waste had landed up in her garden and never been processed out, never been cleaned. So
Wow.
the children were in the garden playing happily and taking in the lead all the time. So, uh, we are in a chemical soup. We know what to do. We have to do this. We have to actually be awake and aware and go, hang on a second. We've got to actually actively take care of ourselves. And I think if people knew the information, they might behave differently. I think
Yeah.
they don't know.
Yeah, and really it doesn't matter where it comes from as long as you know how to detox it, right?
That's the important thing. And I'm not here to judge anybody, and I'm not here to blame anybody. We're all in this together. And believe me, all of us have had to learn these hard lessons. All
Yeah.
of us. Yeah. But so this is not a place of judgment. This is just a place of, this is what it is. This is how we can fix it. Let's get on with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
So you also help moms or parents of ADD, ADHD children, right? To improve
Yeah.
on that or to detox, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So one time I see what the problems are. So no, Jody, it doesn't always happen like that. I profiled a little girl this week, and I realized that it was just the form of education she was currently in that was calling her autistic.
Hmm.
She is not autistic. She just doesn't fit into that mode of education. And so I said to Mum, well, let's put her in a different mode of education. She'll thrive. And then she said, oh, I've been thinking about that. And I'm like, that's what you need to be doing. And she's not autistic. She just is not going to thrive in the normal education system. So sometimes I don't have to do it that way. Sometimes it's not that. Although I have actually spent a lot of time with that particular mum saying, we've got to clean up the water, we've got to clean up the food, we've got to not put in so many chemicals, just on a general thing for the family, the whole family, so that, so everybody's benefiting from that. But sometimes when I do a profile, it isn't always that the child is actually in trouble. They might just be educated badly in that case. But for the most part, I'm seeing children who are toxic and injured in one way or another. And emotional stress is also another toxin. And so it's quite a job actually but then the mother and father have to be open enough to actually go, okay, come and help us.
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
in.
And
Let's
then
fix this together.
you can customize the protocol for the family or the children, right? To figure out, okay, you got to get the
Exactly.
water, food, this, that, emotions, right? You have like a whole, yeah, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. But it really is about getting children to thrive. We really want them to thrive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's so cool. So who
yeah.
invented this brain profile? Is it?
It originally came from a thing called Brain Gym. If you ever
Mhm.
look up Brain Gym, you'll see that there was initially a kind of profiling in that. And then my teacher took um, that kind of format, and she went on to the next level and understood that there was more to the brain than what was there, and she expanded on that. And she was in education. She's also now got a doctorate in education, and she's completely amazing. She's taught around the world about communication and education. But that's what that she came from that. Um, so I'm coming at it kind of from a slightly different angle because I came in from sound therapy. But still, I cannot tell you how many children I've seen that are vaccine injured. Cannot describe to you how many children who are autistic who are not autistic. They're just
Mm.
toxic. And ADD, ADHD, it's the same continuum. It's just a different level of toxicity.
Right. Well,
One mum came to me with 7 children. 2 of them were autistic, but the others weren't. But I had to show her the one had eczema, the other one had asthma. These are also toxicities. They have all the same continuums, just the different levels. And each
Mm.
of us have a different capacity to release chemicals. Some people are really good at it. Other people not so good. And so they struggle more to get rid of the toxins.
I've noticed since, the last 4 years that so many of us have brain fog and hard to concentrate, and all of a sudden they've got ADD or diagnosed with ADD, and I feel like it's all the toxins that they've been throwing on us the last few years. Would you agree?
Totally,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
We're
It's
in a
like
soup.
an
We literally,
epidemic. Yeah,
we're in a soup. Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what the beautiful thing is? We have the answers. I didn't know at the beginning of this in 2020 that we would have the answers, and I felt panicked. I felt that we were being attacked and we didn't have the answers. And I can happily say we have the answers. We know what to do, which is great.
yeah,
You know.
And we have more than one solution, right? So it's like
Yes.
you don't
Yes.
just have to have one magic cure, whatever. There are more than one ways to skin this cat. Pardon the analogy.
No, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true, and they really are. And that's what I love about it, because you might not be willing to do A, B, and C, but you're willing to do D. Yay! You know,
Yeah, there are
totally.
options. Yeah,
Yeah,
there is hope.
there really is hope. But at least the conversation has begun. When you've done
yeah,
the profile,
yeah.
you really know who you're talking to, and so you can start the conversation. At least the conversation begins.
Well,
It is
I'm
really
so impressed, Noeline. I'm really curious. I will book a session with you myself, um, because I'm really curious. Um, I had an interesting time at school when I was there, and I didn't feel smart for a long period of my life in my learning years. So it'll be interesting to see what I learn.
Yeah, they're
well,
happy to
see,
see
and
it.
I only know you as completely brilliant, so
A long time I thought I was stupid. So
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of a lot of the examples you've used in some of your clients, I'm like, that sounds like me.
Sounds like a lot
But
of
we'll
us.
see. Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
there are a lot of us out there.
mm,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
it's
Well, go and find Noeline at brainfocus.nz. Follow her on TikTok. I am.
Oh yeah,
What is what
yeah.
is your TikTok handle?
brains are us.
Brains are us.
Right, dress, yeah. That's so great.
You do great little clips in that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
So yeah, and go and have the conversation. Find out, learn about how you tick, and then how you can thrive. Basically, that's
Yeah,
what you help people do, Noeline. By the sounds, I love it.
yeah, yeah.
indeed.
Which is what we're all about, helping people figure out how to heal themselves so that they can thrive.
Exactly.
That's what we're
Exactly.
all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some serious superhero work.
Yeah, it is. So
Oh, thank
Amazing,
you
awesome.
so
lovely to have
much.
you on. Lovely to meet you. And
Thank
looking
you.
forward to working with you in the future too. We're going to
Yeah,
do
and
great things. Learning,
Thank
learning, learning. I love it.
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Noeline.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you later.